Okay.
You know what?
What? I don't have any idea.
You do, because I was waiting for one of you to call me and stop.
Open the public portion of the meeting. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ooh, we have presentation right off the bat. Neat.
No, just I think one thing you changed it.
Sorry.
You guys are like color coordinated too. Show the kids.
For the presentation.
You did a really nice
You
job.
look perfect for getting the pictures.
I know,
Not
they're
too
not
much, you have to like you're in the same family.
Oh, we can't really.
The whole.
Yeah, really?
Oh, no, what-
Yeah,
I thought
it's
you
funny.
said you wanted us to
So you
see.
guys got some green going on there.
Yeah, I
Shades of it.
understand.
Yeah,
Down here on the oddball end.
Oh, I was.
We should
It
know.
doesn't.
I think lives the other day.
Okay.
We good to go?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. All right, so we wanted to be able to present you with an overview of data. This is last year's data, except for the very first slide that I'm gonna go over, the second slide. And we tried to outline it based on our Learning by Doing book that we've been working through this past summer, and it's a data picture of our school. So there are different categories, and we each have a part. But the first part that I'll share is just giving us the basic overview. These are images right from our data dashboard. Chris, when she was our data coordinator, she would put this information together. Now it's Jenny Coco. And we have on here what our enrollment is up in the top left. So by district, by each building, and then the number of students that are out of district. And the four images below just break it down into more of our demographics. So all the way to the left would just be our gender, pretty split right down the middle. Disability status. We have, I know Matt, thank you, the idea of printing this out for you guys so that you can actually see the print, since you might not be able to see it here. Our disability percentage rate is, I think, 18.4%. And this is compared to 21-22 data for the state. State classification rate or percentage was right around 20%. So, and then compared to other schools in the area, similar to us, we run pretty similarly since 2015-16. And then race ethnicity, you'll see that I think we're 94.4% white and broken into, I think, three other categories. So Black, African-American, Hispanic, and then multiple races. And then to the far right is economically disadvantaged. And the percentage rate on here says 55%. Chris and I were just having a conversation with them.
I said I'm happy to help you with that.
Yes, I'm gonna ask you.
Sure.
So we were having a little conversation before this because I know with the CEP program where all of our students have received free breakfast and lunch, we don't necessarily have those solid applications from our families. So I was asking Chris, like, okay, where does this percentage come from?
Right, and so first of all, a couple of things with economically disadvantaged is it's a flattened number, so that's the number as of the current information on the dashboard that, you know, Kim has, but as that's updated and as we move through the year, other students who become eligible through the direct certification match process, or if a family were to submit an application for financial application for free or reduced lunch, we might see that number go up. So we said that number is relatively low. It typically runs in the low 60% overall. for
Across
the
districts or
across
Candor?
district.
For Candor.
For Candor, yeah. So we know that that is not reflective of what that number will be all year. And again, most of that comes from our eligibility at the beginning of the year, which is that direct certification match program, which is information that the food service director, that Michelle, brings in an import from those students and families that are eligible, not by application. So other, their families might receive other financial assistance through like our county services, other programs, and that makes them categorically eligible for free and reduced lunch. So that's basically what that number is there.
And, when you look at our overall demographics and we tend to look at, what are those either marginalized groups or what are the numbers and what are the implications for us and making decisions at the district level, you making decisions and supporting recommendations for whether it's programming or staffing, resources, but also our teachers. What are those, how are they navigating the needs in the classrooms? And, we look at our classification rate for special education. We also look at our economically disadvantaged. And, what does that mean in the classroom? It means that we have some students that have challenges, some big challenges that our teachers then have the responsibility to try to leverage. What are the supports? What are the interventions? How do I instruct? How do I teach all of these 20 kids in my class, of which 12 might be lacking some real basic skills, especially in the area of those executive function, prioritizing work, time management, self-regulation, coping skills. So how are those basic needs met by our teachers for our kids? And so that we can teach them, so that we can provide them with the information that they need.
What's the threshold for yes versus no? Is it poverty line? Is it somewhere above plus a percentage? What makes it a yes versus no in that category? Do you know? When they say yes for economically disadvantaged, I mean below the poverty line?
For most of our students, so there are a couple of, it's whether they're eligible for free and reduced lunch is the big.
Okay.
So whether it's through application or through that direct certification match. And then there are some students who are automatically eligible regardless of income. So if a student becomes homeless, they automatically become.
So it's not a black and white yes or no, there's criteria and it's variable. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions before I turn things over to Pete and Lee? Okay, take it away.
Can we get this?
Oh, yep, sorry, I told Matt I'd.
Alright, so this is included in your packet too. So earlier this week, I met with all of the 3rd through 6th grade teams, and we looked at this data more in depth than what you're seeing here. This is just a snapshot of the whole grade level as a whole in 3rd through 6th grade. And then in the next slide, I'll talk about what we discussed and the implications of this data and how we can improve our practices to support proficiency. But a few notable things about this data specifically are that all cohorts in ELA showed improvement from 2022 test, with the exception of the 4th grade cohort, who in 2022 were 11% proficiency. In this year's data, they're at the 10% line, so right around that typical proficiency from the previous year. Similar in math, all of our cohorts showed improvement from the 2022 assessment, with the exception of the 6th grade cohort, who had 38% in the previous assessment in 2022. And then, I reported on it last month about our standards mastery and trying to find different data to support intervention blocks. And we've noticed that since the implementation of our standards mastery data is very closely related to what we see in the proficiency rates from the state. so they're more rigorous. And we hope that as we continue to use that data, the standards mastery data, it'll help inform our practices, particularly during our intervention block. I think that's the biggest bang for our buck. And I have a little bit about our intervention block on future slides. But I think it's impressive to note that the biggest jump from 2022 to 2023 was the 5th grade ELA cohort. So right here, the previous year, that cohort had scored 18% proficient. So they had quite a jump in 2023. So that's pretty impressive. And then I noted in the middle here, the number of refusals, which is about what we get every year.
That's across 3 through 8, right? That's all together.
No, that's just 3-6.
Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So like I said, we met as at each grade level, all the teachers were able to meet with us about the data and actually dig deeper into the release questions that were released by the state. And we developed some takeaways and some strategies to help improve some of this data. And I just want to mention a couple of the takeaways. We listed about 5 takeaways, but I want to list probably, the top 3 takeaways. So one of the takeaways after looking at the data, looking how our kids performed on each critical response and multiple choice data, it was clear that the kids have a hard time retrieving the words off the page or reading those long texts. And a lot of our curriculum is explicit skill teaching. So part of the teacher's response was to utilize some of the strategies that the Reading League is starting to teach our teachers. One of them being the 6-step lesson plans that I'm sure we'll talk about in the next couple of months and what that looks like. And then the Reading League is also going to be working with our teachers the next early release day in December on what that looks like in practice and give them an opportunity to perform that 6th step based on their topics that they're teaching. So that was one thing that the teachers took away. Another thing that the teachers across the board, every grade level said, the kids lack stamina to perform this entire test. Even the multiple choice questions, they're pretty lengthy, but particularly the critical response questions. Some of the things that we discussed on supporting stamina were, how do we support students in the productive struggle? So letting the kids struggle productively and support their learning in that manner. So we discussed having some professional development in regards to what productive struggle looks like, sounds like, and feels like, and that's across the board with our aides, because our aides support a lot instructionally, whether it's during intervention or just general support in the classroom. So Sarah and I have to figure out how are we going to provide that support for the aides and then our teachers in what that look, feels, and sounds like for our kids. And a lot of times it's against our nature as teachers, like just to watch a kid struggle, but that's one of the ways to increase the stamina of our students, to have that ability to work their way through those challenging texts and questions. And then lastly, something that came up was vocabulary across the board. The vocabulary on this test, the questions that are asked are a little bit different than what our curriculum, how our curriculum poses questions. So the teachers are going to be giving the computer-based testing simulation a lot earlier in the school year. So when we come back from Christmas break, we're going to talk about it at our next faculty meeting about how to implement those practice tests. The state releases 3 practice tests and getting the kids on that so they become more familiar with the verbiage, the vocabulary a lot sooner. And then the teachers using that vocabulary interchangeably with their curriculum to get the kids to hear it more often. And then I'll include the rest of them in probably December, January's report so you can see what the teachers all came up with. So our intervention block, I've reported on this at our meetings quite a bit. So it's an all hands on deck approach, and I want to talk about the pre-teaching piece of it. Pre-teaching is a non-negotiable in our intervention block. So what that means is once every 3-day cycle for math, once every 3-day cycle for ELA, teachers are pre-teaching content that the kids are going to get in the near future, whether it's comprehension strategies, whether that's whatever it could be fact fluency or number sense for math. So the teachers take 1 day of intervention and pre-teach strategies or topics. And it really goes off the model that we set our summer school as, pre-teaching for the next grade level. And the teachers are really finding that that's successful in that by the time the kids are actually learning the curriculum and the topics, they have exposure to those vocabulary words, the types of questions that are asked. And then the last piece here, the ORF plan, this is relatively new. Sarah and I are working on a testing team. We're gonna ask, we have a testing team of 5 people, a couple retired teachers, that we're gonna have come in before Christmas break, and we're gonna ORF all of our students to get that baseline data, or reading fluency. Yeah, or reading fluency. Sorry about that.
We used to dibble them, now we're
Now we're
working.
So to get that baseline of data, and then again, it's the work of the Reading League that's driving this. I don't want to get too much in the weeds of the Reading League, but following the work, we do have a plan to address the gaps in the students' literacy. And that more than likely is going to happen during the intervention block. And I still have to talk to teachers about how that fits in, but a lot of teachers are really having great conversations surrounding the ORF and the Reading League conversations. So I'm excited about that plan. And Sarah and I are really taking on that approach of like that SWAT team, that testing team that comes in, grabs a kid for a minute. This ORF is only a minute long. And then the student doesn't miss much instruction, returns back to class. So that's really in the infancy stages of that planning, but we're gonna do that. Our goal is by Christmas break. And weighing this up.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And well done. I try to match that, and then we'll just get right to the topic. I have the state assessment results. On the left, on your left, you can see the 7th and 8th grade proficiency exam data. And this is, again, the ones that were at proficiency. As we've seen in the past, our students don't do particularly well in the at least grade 7 and 8 exams. The proficiency rates are particularly low in grades 7 ELA math. What I want to do, but then you see they're higher in grade 8. So I want to take a look back at the same cohort, these 7th graders when they were 6th graders, to see how they did. Then the 8th graders when they were 7th graders and see how they did, to see if there's growth or, you know, if they dipped a little bit. One thing I'll always say, our grade 8 science is typically quite high. And that's compared to other schools. That's across the, our kids do well in science for, you know, and I'm sure it's, you know, the instruction and the kids, and, you know, for whatever reason we do well. So I'm happy to share that. But going back to what I was talking about, these 7th graders, when they were 6th grade, in ELA, I had it written here, in ELA, they had 29% proficiency. Now they're at 18, so they've gone down some. In 6th grade, they were 31% proficiency in math, and now they're 26. These kids have struggled a bit coming into 7th grade. We have a lot of interventions in place. But that's something we got to look at. That transition from 6th grade to 7th grade has always been something that we know is difficult for students, and it was for this 7th grade group. So I can give you some details on that. I'm not going to, other than we recognize that this group struggled a little bit. Now, I'm pleased to share that, first of all, grade 8 ELA. I don't recall us ever on a 7th and 8th grade exam have over 50% proficiency. That was good to see last year. The ELA, when these 8th graders, 7th graders, 31% proficiency for ELA. And for math was 35%. So they both have gone up significantly. So what we're doing with the teachers, the instruction, the kids, it seems like it's gaining some momentum when they get to 8th grade. And we'll just keep an eye on that and see how things going, see how we can improve on that. Regents exams. They have the percent proficiency there. Proficiency for Regents exams is a 65 or higher. What you see here is pretty typical. I could bring, you know, based on the cohorts, the test, we're typically somewhere around 75 to 80% proficiency. Some years we're higher. I mean, English, I'll give you an example. Last year we're 87% proficient. This year they're 72. It can fluctuate like that, but I can just share as a baseline doing this for years and seeing our results for years, typically 75 to 80% proficiency, particularly on the 5 regents that our students have to take. So understanding that, you know what, we have pretty much this consistency that we're seeing in Regents exams. Some consistency in the 7th and 8th, although we're seeing a nice little bump there in 8th grade, but our 7th graders struggled a bit last year. What can we do to bump that level up? We've tried a lot of things. And now we're saying, all right, so why do we keep trying the same things, doing the same things, expecting a different result? So I want to talk a little bit on that, what we're doing. So I want to talk about the interventions a little bit, something we've always done and we'll continue to do because it is a best practice. I sat down with, oops, I have a slide for this. All right, I sat down with each of the departments who had state assessments, got the gap analysis results. We looked at the questions with them and they got to look through their results and see where the gaps were, see what the questions were the kids struggled with, see where those area of opportunity are for them to make some changes. That's always been really beneficial. When we get done with that meeting, each of the departments for their assessments, they try to come up with 3 goals that they're going to focus on to try to improve the following year's results. And what I asked them each to do is I want you to make a intentional, and I know they benchmark, they give assessments through the year, make an intentional benchmarking at 20 weeks, 30 weeks, and before they take the exam to see where they're at. So you can make sure they're learning the information from these gaps or these areas of opportunity, make sure the kids are learning that. Let's make sure they're retaining what we're trying to teach them. So that's the plan. We've always done that. We're going to continue to do that. Again, that alone, has that really made a significant change in our results? No, it hasn't. All right. The MTSS, multi-tier systems of support. This is something we put in place last year. This is for 7th and 8th graders. We have the tiered intervention, tier 1, 2, and 3, based on the iReady scores. In 6th period, the students break up into classrooms. The tier 1 students are working with Neil and some enrichment activities. Tier 2, kids are getting kind of a little lower, but baseline support in either ELA or math as needed. Tier 3, these are the smaller group of kids that are in working with the content area teacher, the content specialist, getting the support they need to help them be successful. 9th through 12th grade, we have the tiered intervention that's based on the kids failing, who's failing at that point is 3 or more. Typically kids that are really struggling passing the courses, they work with Mark Burrell and he gives them some support in the areas they need. I don't know where the slide went on this, but we're also, I had another bullet. I don't know where it went, disappeared. But we're having Mark with these students. He's been using last year's iReady for the 8th grade, the last one, to give some of these 9th graders the oral reading fluency test assessment and work on the reading skills for the Phonics for Reading program. So he's working with some of those kids, and the goal is to eventually do that with all students, even 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. We're building up to that. So we're trying to understanding, and I'll get into that a little bit. Literacy. I went to a conference on it and years ago, and it hit me like a train, and I still believe it, and we're all on board with it. That's an area of opportunity that we really need to focus on, because we've tried a lot of things, but this is research-based strategies to help students be more successful. But like I said, I'll get back to that. Another intervention we put in place last year, the academic accountability plan, and that's not new for our athletes, but it is new for all the other students in the building. So what we did last year is we said, you know what, it's not fair just for students who are athletes to be held accountable if they're failing 1, 2, or 3 or more classes. All students now, if they are failing 1 class or 2 classes or 3 classes, they go to tier 3, we're going to give them interventions. And some of those interventions in the school day is they're not going to be able to go to the art room and work on extra projects or go down and work with Mr. Lindrich down the shop. You got to work on, if you're struggling in math, ELA, social, you're going to stay in the learning lab and you're going to work on those content areas to bring your grade up. And you're also not going to go to games. You're not going to go to concerts. You're going to be prohibited from doing that, just like the athletes are. Today, I got a copy of our failing list, students that are failing after the first quarter. I'm pretty shocked, pleasantly, because it's the first time I looked at the end of the day today. I said, I want to get this data. I just wonder what it's going to look like. I'm blown away. Based on after when we started this year with our MTS multi-tier systems of support with the 7th and 8th graders, had it going since week 5 with the 9th through 12th graders. Last year, first quarter, we had 66 students failing at least one class. Last year we had 66 students, last year at 10 weeks. Go working from that 66 students, the number of them failing two classes is 40 students. So of the 66, 40 of them were failing 2 classes, and of that 66 and that 40, there were 27 of them failing 3 classes. Is that making sense? So you can see the, not great numbers, especially when you hear how they are now. This year, after the first quarter, the numbers I got today, 51 students are failing 1 course. It's down from 66. Number of students failing 2 courses, 21. And then number of students from that 51 failing 3 courses is 16. So that's a drop, 15% drop from students failing 1. 23% drop from students failing 1, 48% decrease, students failing 2, and then 41% decrease in students failing 3 or more. That's a big change in 1 year. And I do think that has something to do with the interventions, giving the kids more support, and also holding kids accountable. I think the two together have reaped some benefits. So it's nice to see some data that and I'm going to share this with the teachers. They haven't heard it yet. But I think it's good to know that their efforts are making a difference. So that'd be interesting. And so talking a little bit about, what we're doing with literacy. Last year, Kim, remind, was it last year? Better Lessons. We worked with them. I can't remember 1 year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, we were working with Better Lessons. They came in and we were trying to figure out how to support literacy back then, how best to support it, in my case, for the high school. And after some meetings, we had a team of teachers in there with Kim and I. We determined that, vocabulary, our kids struggle with vocabulary, particularly tier 2 and tier 3 words. What can we do to support them? So I did learning walks. I went through all the teachers in the building. Matt made me a nice little spreadsheet, and I checked through all the different identifiers I was trying to look for. And at the end, I put in some data, and I sat down with our English department. And I said, what can we do? You guys are the English, closest thing we got to reading experts in the building. What are some strategies? What are some things we can do to help support our students better in literacy? And the Reading League's been really great too, because it just, things work out sometimes in a crazy way. But we put this initiative through. We said tier 2 words, that's what we're going to focus on. So with the English department, and all the teachers are on board, they've been great. I think all the teachers are like, yes, tier 2 words. We came up with a coyote word of the week. Started that, not this week, last week. So each week we are introducing a tier 2 word. And the English department comes up with a little poster, and it has the word, has the definition, has it in a sentence. And then we ask each teacher in each class to use that word of the week at least 2 times every day. So these kids are getting inundated with the word of the week. And one of the kids, I was in a classroom, the kid's like, integrate, I get it. He goes, enough. If I hear that word one more time, integrate. But then he used it in a sentence later, so that was funny. Because he didn't like it, but it's sunk in. It's just like that bad song you want to forget, but you can't do it. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's what we're hoping. So that was a great, and then when the Reading League came in last week, that was a great idea. They go, that's exactly what you should be doing. But as they talked a little bit, they said, you need to introduce 8 to 10 new words a week. Oh, we're doing 1. Well, that's good. It's a far cry from where we need to be. So, but after the meeting, I sat down, I asked for a meeting with some teachers, and I had some teachers show up, and we talked about it, and we have a plan now. We're going to ask the core content areas to focus on, in their content areas, focus on 2 new tier 2 words that would best suit their department. And we're gonna share them out. So between English, math, social studies, science, 2 new words plus the word of the week, that's 9 new words. Now we're getting where we need to be. And they need to use those in their department, their lessons throughout the week. So they'll be using those words 10 times or more each week, along with the word of the week that we're gonna keep going. So our kids should get 9 new tier 2 words of the week that they're being introduced with. So, yes, I did. So, all right, I did put that I thought was on the other slide, it's not. So there it is. But I really do think literacies, I'm convinced it's gonna make a difference. I'm convinced that our interventions are working. And it's gonna take time. I talked to Brent and the admin team talked about it. This isn't a magic wand that's gonna change it next year. But we're gonna see a little growth. And next thing, in 5 or 6 years, we're really gonna see some growth. And I'm very thankful to the teachers. They've been great. By and large, they understand and they appreciate the focus on particularly tier 2 and tier 3 words. And I think they've all been great. They've been on board with it. And I'm really thankful for their support with this. So.
Wayne, have you gotten buy-in from like the math and science? I know previously you'd talked that they were a little, I won't say standoffish, but a little late to jump on board because they didn't see the value in their curriculums. Have you started to get a lot more support from those guys?
I'm across the board.
Good. Because that's what I've seen, and obviously I don't deal with it as much as you guys. I've seen some pretty good literacy and reading comprehension, but when they have to apply it to those math and science principles, they really struggle with bridging the concepts over to that content.
The reason why everyone's on board, when you look at these state assessments and you look at the struggles students have, it's oftentimes not the math that's the issue.
Right.
It's what do they want me to do with this math? What do they want me to do with this problem? And it's because they can't, the words coming off the page don't make sense to them.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do, have it so the words make sense to them. So yes, I think more than ever, I think all of our teachers are on board.
Great, cool.
All right, and then I think that's it for me for now anyways. Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna talk about student engagement with extracurricular activities. And this goes off from what Wayne was talking about with the AAP. So this fall, we had 129 out of the 298 7th through 12th graders playing a fall sport. We had 80 varsity and JV athletes and 49 mod. We had, so this is a typo on here on my behalf. Oh no, it's changed, it's right on there. Nice. On your paper, Charles. 49 students who hold an average GPA of 94.75 or higher than 90 for the scholar athletes, but 49 of those athletes from the fall. So with the academic policy that Wayne spoke about last year in the spring, it'll be 2 years in the spring, we implemented the AEP with Spencer Benetton. So we had SVEC teams that were following a Spencer policy and a Candor policy. And they're talking to the kids and saying, well, you have to do this, but then a kid over here might be failing, but it wasn't the same, and it just didn't feel right. So we implemented the same policy. And so what it looks like is if a student is failing right now, after the first 5 weeks, that's when it all starts. If they are failing, they have 2 weeks to get those grades up. They can practice, but they may not play in a game. No, sorry, first 2 weeks they can practice and play. They're working on getting their grades up. After that 2 weeks, that's when it really kicks in. If they're still failing, they can practice, but they may not participate in a game. And that's where Wayne talked about for everybody, they wouldn't be able to then go to a game or to an extracurricular activity.
How do you define frequent flyer? And does it carry over year to year?
So we start fresh in the fall because we feel like they need to be able to start fresh. So frequent flyers, that happens every season.
Right.
So that I implemented this year because here we started and it was the same kids time after time that last year. So I guess frequent flyer would carry over from year to year because it was every season last year. And then in the fall, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, here we are again, we're not gonna have this conversation. So it was just ineligible immediately. Honestly, I think it's the only way to get it moving and realize that they need to. And then, so I just wanted to add this, varsity boys soccer had an overall average of 92, varsity girls soccer a 97, varsity girls cross country a 93, varsity boys cross country a 95, varsity football a 93, and varsity volleyball a 98. Pretty exciting. So, and that's of the scholar athlete. So did I talk about how you get a scholar athlete? So 75% of your team has to have 90% or higher, and that's how you get a scholar. Questions for me?
One last time and then I'll keep you guys going. All right, so I've talked about some of our attendance initiatives before, and I put last year's data in this current year's data. All the initiatives there that our attendance committee has decided on, and we do this building wide, and I hope, you know, as the 93 turns to 95 so far this year, it goes to show that what we're doing is working, right? And we hope to continue that 95%. I've reported on all those before, so if you have questions, let me know. The total discipline, the 79%, a school around our size, small rural district, it typically carries about around 100 write-ups on a typical school year based on my experience in similar schools. And I have to say, I was in school today and we had a sub come in and they shared that they've been in our building a couple of times already this year. And she said, your kids are just different here. And I have to agree in a good way. I have to agree, you know, being in 3 different districts, our kids and our families are awesome. They send us the best that they have, and that best is awesome. So kudos to the families out there that are listening. I have talked about a lot of these things, but I want to focus on 2 of these things down here in the last bullet. The preventative measures could mean an array of things, but I want to hone in on it is not uncommon for a teacher or my secretary, Jackie, or Sarah, or our social worker or counselor to take their own time, whether it's their contracted break time, lunchtime, to go into those unstructured lunches, the recesses, just the kids mingling in the halls and just create those connections with the kids. Every morning, all of us, with the exception of one person, are out of the office meeting and greeting kids. It's truly not uncommon, and our teachers are just that selfless to be able to create those relationships, which has a positive impact on our behavioral data. I'm grateful to work in a school district with the staff that we have who care that much about our kids. And so I appreciate that work from the staff. This is the trauma informed. We spoke about it. Wayne and I both spoke about it this year in some reports, but it's critical that to share every month at our faculty meeting. Our social workers, Merrick and Karina, often do a 5 to 10 minute PD on something trauma informed. Last month, it was looking at behavior through a different lens, the lens of a student who's undergone trauma in their life, and then how to respond to that type of student when you're engaged in a conversation with them, or whether they're undergoing, you know, some behavioral challenge, something like that. So that work is invaluable. We've had a lot of teachers ask questions to Merrick in our building, and then Karina in the high school too. So in the 2 social workers work on the plan together. So all staff pre-K-12 get the same content, same message. And that's invaluable for our behavior data too. So questions about that, we'll leave it at that and have the next person come on. Thank you. Wayne?
All right, and we as well, at the high school, 93% attendance. That is lower than it typically was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was about 95% most years. 95, 96, 94. Now it's at 93. But we have seen after COVID, there's been a bit of a drop in attendance, particularly with the kids who were chronically absent. They become more chronically absent. It's been a real struggle to get them. Once they kind of got in the habit of being home, I guess it kind of seemed like it was okay to stay home. So understanding that, what are some things that we're doing to intervene? Well, what we've always done, I don't have it on here, we send the data. If a student's out, we have the robocall that goes out that tells the kid's absent. We also, we send out monthly attendance reports for our code of conduct. If every month we send one out for kids that are missing 5 days, 10 days, 15th, in those increments. So that's something we've always done. Something we have increased is the number of meetings with parents and students who are chronically absent, bringing them, having a conversation, coming up with a plan, working with the parents. Hotlining, it just isn't effective. They say, well, hotline. There's really nothing the county can do. I can tell you that hasn't been effective in getting kids to come to school more. So it's better if the school works with them. So we either have them come for a meeting. If they don't, we've gone and knocked on doors and talked to the parents or talked to the kids at home. Ask them what's going on, finding out what's going on. How can we support you? How can we work together to get your child at school? So we've been out to a few visits already, and few of them seem to have made a difference, a few haven't. At that point, you can hotline, hopefully get some support, but understanding that it hasn't really been effective in the past. So that's attendance. As far as disciplines, it's a little different than elementary school, 214 offenses. Is that a lot? I can tell you about 1.25 offenses a day. To me, how bad some days get doesn't seem that bad, but I haven't really asked other school districts what they have, so I really don't know how to compare that to. I can't tell you this over years, particularly when I was dean of students here, that's way down from what it used to be. So we got a great staff, we got great kids, got good kids that make bad choices at times, and our, like we say, crisis, anytime we have a disciplinary issue, a crisis is an opportunity to teach them better behavior. So that's how we really focus on that. Pete put a lot of good things in there. I kind of did the reactive steps, where we had the traditional consequences, we got to give them the consequence, but really what are some things we can do to teach them better behaviors from our conversations with either Mr. Bennett, myself, with teachers, the restorative meetings. We're getting kids together now if both parties are willing. That's very important. We don't get kids together if one of them is uncomfortable with it, but if they're willing, we try to get kids together and we have usually one of our guidance counselors or social workers facilitating that conversation, hopefully bring them together. We've had a lot of success with that so far. That's been very, very effective. But proactively, we have our student support team meeting, like Pete says, we have one at the high school too, and that works very well. Try to get out in front of some of these kids that are going through trauma, having some social emotional issues. We try to hook them up with counselors or get them the academic intervention they need. And social emotional support. Eva Collier, the guidance counselor, is going into 7th and 8th grade and teaching SEL lessons once every 2 weeks with the 7th graders and 8th graders. She's rotating from department, so she's not taking too much time, but that has been, I've sat in as many as I could to have some conversations, be part of those conversations, but that's been really good. And that's just something else to kind of teach students how to get along better. So hopefully that'll pay dividends as well. But any questions about that? All
Just
right.
curious how parents, are there parents who don't know their kids are absent, or are they?
They don't know?
When you have a meeting with your kid is absent, a whole boatload, and the kid and the parent are both there, like, how do they?
They know.
It's just,
Yeah, they know. I can't get them. They're at a loss. They can't get their kid to school. I can tell you Bob Eamon got his son to school. I won't tell you how we did it, but he'd be going to school. But I'm not faulting anyone. I understand different kids are different, but
yeah, I was just curious what the reaction was, 'cause,
Yeah.
like same sort of.
yeah, it's at a loss. And usually they're more than open to suggestions or open to getting some help.
Okay.
But I tell parents all the time, I'm not coming into your house and pulling kids out of bed. That's not my role. I'm not gonna do it. You need to help us. You need to get them to that point where they get to the bus. After that, we'll do what we can, but there's certain limitations.
So this is just learning resources or what students are doing when they're on their Chromebooks. Just to sort of highlight that anything that's on this list is educational, really. I mean, I'm sure there's some YouTube that is music and things that they're listening to for fun in study halls and those sorts of things. But other than that, first in math, Delta Math, in one of the top 5, 4, and 5, or 5 and 6, and typing club, again, is high. Our Friday morning, meetings are, working on typing skills. So it was nice to see that, high up in the list. But a lot of math, apps, and then, other games, review games, and many of these actually are focusing on teachers using them to help with some literacy skills as well. So anytime students are online, they're engaging with text, and they're using the digital resources that we have for them, I think, appropriately and well in the classroom. And even a couple Spanish right up here in the top ones are middle school Spanish here and the high school Spanish there. So this is something that you've seen before. I usually do this in the spring, but I think I'll be short.
So I love that presentation. I hope you did too. And my role is really just to answer any questions you might have. One point that I did want to make is kind of a closing comment is our data is never bad and it's never good. The data is just the data. What makes it good and bad is what you do with it. And they do, and when I say they, obviously the administrative team that just presented, but all the teachers and the aides and teaching assistants and the students, when we get the data in front of them, are doing stuff with it and they're doing the right things with it. And, I love this presentation again because it showed that the initiatives that we're doing aren't based on what's popular or, what's trending right now. It's based on what we need and what our students need, and we know what they need by looking at the facts, and the facts in a data form that we can use across the board, pre-K through 12. So that's what we're doing. I know it was mentioned a couple of times, we can be doing all the right things. We won't see a result immediately, but it's coming. And the early indicators are all saying that the team and the teachers and the students are on the right track. So I find it very heartening and optimistic. Few things that I'll caution, I think everybody on the board knows, but it also bears saying for anybody who's watching, a little bit of data can be very misleading. You'll see things like one grade level has a high level of proficiency and the grade level above or below is comparably not that good. It really doesn't tell you anything until you look deep into the data, understand the reasons why. That example I just mentioned, it happens year after year, but then you'll look one grade level across the state has a lower proficiency. Well, that was the test, right? Not that there was anything wrong with the test. It took a higher level than most kids at that grade level were at on that year to hit that proficiency mark. And again, I know we all understand that, but I just want to caution us, as we look at our data, as the comparative data comes out that's still embargoed, we may not have scores that are high as another school. Doesn't mean they're doing something better than we are. There are some schools that have very high proficiency rates that I don't think any of us would want our children to go to. It's just not a good place. This is a great school for so many reasons, and we're using the data to help drive our instruction and help our students more. So, any questions?
The only data point that would be nice that was missing was graduation rate.
Yeah, about 90%. I can get you an exact on that, but
But all of this was really great. Thanks for taking all the time to put it together, guys.
I have a question. If you're looking at the economically disadvantaged students, 55%, of that 55%, where are those students falling in terms of struggling, failing, attendance, or vice versa? The students who are struggling and not coming to school, are they falling in that 55% or 44%? Because it seems like the students who are, but then also the students who are involved in extracurricular activities seem to be doing very well. And where are they falling in that chart?
I can answer. There's a very, I think, Neil, were you in the meeting last year with the seventh grade, the
Yes.
attendance data. There is a clear correlation between attendance and, chronic absenteeism in students. That's undebatable. As far as, students who, are you saying students that are classified?
No,
No.
so the economically
Economically
disadvantaged.
disadvantaged.
So
Academically, I
that-
don't have that data in front of me. I don't have,
But we do have
Economically.
that data,
We do.
so, yeah.
yeah, so
And
I,
what interventions then do you do in those cases?
For the students that are,
Struggling and fall into that disadvantaged.
that's partly the intervention for the student, but it's also professional development for the adults, because
How to have those
how do we help them?
supplement.
And that's kind of what Pete talked about and what our counselors do too, that they're not just counseling students.
Yeah,
They also talk about in being impoverished is traumatic. So when we talk about trauma-informed instruction, and all those interventions are tailored for those students, because again, it's the highest
and I
correlation.
think those
big
interventions
hurdle.
are then going to help you in high school.
Yeah.
And help your peers that they're doing, yeah.
And I just looking at some of the studies around economically disadvantaged, one of the statements I jotted down was, economically disadvantaged students are at risk, obviously higher at risk of underperforming academically. Incoming readiness levels into kindergarten are lower. Chronic exposure to poverty-related stressors, but also can sometimes be seen as less competent. So students that fall within that category can sometimes be seen as less competent, and we have to be cautious that we're not doing that to our kids, and that we're making sure that not only are we giving them every opportunity, but we're supporting them. And it's also the mindset of, it doesn't mean, we have to break through that barrier, because otherwise, generationally, that's what we see. That they never get the leg up when it comes to a job, or are they going to graduate? Because they're capable of graduating. It's just that there are other stressors in their life, and we have to make sure that, Brent has talked about it. We believe every student here can learn and achieve at a high level. Our teachers are great teachers, and they do have a bigger challenge in front of them than some other places.
Yeah.
So.
It's not insurmountable at all. It's just.
No, I
Doing
just
what
think
we
that's
do.
an
Yeah,
important
it is.
area to note when you're talking about interventions in the school district, especially here.
And Kim did say it, and it was said in the presentation to the board, thank you for all the support you give us. But when I think about the elementary building in particular, pre-K program, we've extended that and gone beyond the max, but we wouldn't have been able to do that without your support of additional funding, because it goes beyond what our UPK grant allows. So getting those students in earlier to get them kindergarten ready to start their educational career. If you've been or experienced our pre-K program, it is not it is academic, but our focus is social emotional well-being, getting them here, feeding them free breakfast and lunch, getting them used to the transitions that they're gonna experience in kindergarten. So it starts with the pre-K program, which the board has been fully supportive, Brent and Chris with the funds have been fully supportive. So from my perspective on that point, thank you, everybody who had a hand in that.
You wrote the grant.
And Mrs. Loomis, right?
What's that?
Did Miss Loomis?
Yeah, it's like it was a
Yeah.
team, yeah, but
Mrs.
we expanded it this year to add more kids,
Nice.
which
Yeah.
incurred more costs, so.
I forget, how many over were we?
Oh geez, we have around,
218 class.
it's an 18 and a 20 class, but we have 6 to 8 on our waiting list still. So,
And I think we don't have Head Start and Even Start like we used to. We don't have those early intervention programs. So, yeah, thank you. Good point.
Thanks, guys. Very much. Back to the businessy part, less fun part.
They still have a board.
I know, trying to. First up, accepting the CPSE and CSE reports that we reviewed previously. Is there a motion to accept those? Thanks, Nate. Great, second, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes of the regular meeting 2019. I don't have any notes. Okay. Is there a motion to approve those? Thanks, Trent. Is there a second? Thanks, Kate. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Reports, treasurer's report. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Thanks, Ray. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then the appropriation status report. Yeah, big. Is there a motion to approve the appropriation status report? Thanks, Nate. Is there a second? Thanks, Brent. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Alright. On to warrants. The landing electric visit on page 2, that's separate, whatever they did is separate from capital stuff.
You said landing electric.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim was here, you do the first. I'll have to get back in. I'm not sure. But I'm thinking replacing electric station.
The Tyler Technologies, I know it's the bus GPS stuff on page 6. Is that like a one-time startup or is that a yearly cost or what are we looking at?
So it's a combination of, both of those things. There is an annual charge for the Tyler Drive and Tyler Technologies and the tablets and the training, and that's about, I want to say that, I think it's about $7,000 a year.
Okay.
But then this is part of the implementation of that whole overall system, that's been ongoing. So it's a little bit of both in this set of transactions.
Does that entitle us to yearly software updates?
I believe that's part of that, annual subscription fee is, or that recurring cost includes those things, yes.
And oh, right away. I was gonna ask her about the training and stuff.
Sure, to the restroom.
Oh, okay, I'll hold off on that question.
Are there software or hardware updates included, or would we have to say if the hardware becomes obsolete in 16 months, is there some kind of a reduced replacement cost maybe?
I believe the hardware meaning iPads.
Maybe,
I don't know that system, I didn't purchase it, and I didn't help install it, but my understanding is the iPads will run for a long time, and will be easily replaced, but I don't believe that that's included, that part of the hardware is included in anything that is purchased there. So.
I guess I'd be more concerned with regular software updates being.
Yeah, I'm sure that those are just,
And that's part of the annual.
that's part of that.
Sorry, my ill-timed question.
Sorry.
Well, no, you're all good. Did they physically come out to train the bus drivers, or how did the training process go?
So Katie, being Katie, took it on herself to explore and try it. And then they came out and trained after she had already explored, so she had all the questions that she needed already. It was
Good.
great, yeah. They did some stuff online and in person, so. And we've worked with Tyler Drive already, so they have that relationship, so.
So kind of
Katie's pleased, and the drivers are loving
Katie
it.
is training the drivers, more or less.
Yeah, they like train the trainer, basically, so, yeah. This went well.
And adoption is going okay.
They had, one day they had, I don't know, 4 or 5 drivers, I think, in there online, doing it online, in the bus garage, but they had them all together going through the stuff. They're trying to implement it slowly though, so it's not, they wanna work out the kinks with some of the drivers that are more comfortable with technology, and then, work with them as it goes on, it's going well.
And then my last question is the bottom of page 9, CBIZ valuation group.
So that's our annual update for our fixed assets and inventory. They work with our insurance company and they do all of those required reports for our audit. We supply the inventory information, but that's the subscription for them to do that data run of all of that. Adjustments, all of that stuff, yeah. Depreciation, all that good stuff.
Next bunch is federal funds for. And then school lunch for. And then capital fund for. Is there a motion to approve that bundle of 4 warrants?
I'll move.
Ms. Brent, is there a second?
A second.
Excuse me, Ray, Brent. Sorry, I was predicting the future apparently. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Neil, you're our only visitor tonight. Any words of wisdom for us? Or
Never any
questions
words
or
of
anything?
wisdom. I was chatting with Brent earlier today, and I don't want to say ask permission, but we chatted about it. And since I'm coming to these meetings, I thought, there might be 1 or 2 things I could say that might not make it into Wayne or Pete's reports that are just from, a teacher's perspective. So I promise if I ever do that, I will tonight, but if I ever do it, it really won't be very long. So I just have one thing to share for 2 of our teachers. Mrs. Larson and Mr. Beckner, both English teachers in this building. They applied for and were granted funding for an innovation project from the Tioga County Teacher Center. Their project, I didn't realize how much of the presentation tonight was going to focus on, particularly from Wayne, on literacy and the references back to the Reading League and so on. So I didn't plan this, but it just happens. Their project, which is directed at students in 7th, 8th, and 11th grade, for the rest of this year, is basically an effort to put into practice methods to help students develop a stronger relationship to reading, for pleasure, for entertainment, and for information. By basically giving more attention to independent choice reading. We've talked a lot, you've talked a lot, you've heard a lot about reading instruction, especially at the elementary level or things like that, to make sure students can read what's on the page. What Mr. Brecken and Mrs. Larson are doing is more about reading for literature, reading for the richness of the language, reading for understanding, and developing those reading skills on their own as they read their own stuff. Their focal points would be to first prioritize independent, what we call choice reading, in the curriculum by dedicating more time to reading and move to be more intentional in setting students up for this, which, you know, might sound like that makes sense for English teachers, but it's a challenge to do that with the curriculum that they have and all of the different things that they need to do to simply set aside time for quiet reading for students. It's not easy to find that time and to be efficient to make that time. Second, to measure student attitudes and feelings about reading and literature, and that's really the crux of it for those two teachers. And then third, to build the skills and attitudes that will encourage that lifelong commitment to reading as an act of personal fulfillment. Those are the skills, those are the kind of attitudes that we want students to develop overall, to be that well-rounded, effective person, and to find that personal fulfillment, and to be dedicated to that lifelong reading. So that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna study that, they're gonna implement some things, they'll report back to the teacher center and give a presentation to them at the end of the year. It's not the kind of thing that's likely gonna change test scores for 7th grade or 8th grade, or perhaps not even 11th grade now, but it is the kind of thing that certainly could do that in the future. But more importantly, again, develop that understanding of what a book or other forms of information, other forms of text can give to all of us. So that's what they're doing. That's it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, test scores are only one itty bitty part. Yeah, there's a world of literature out there, so that's awesome. No considerations. Do we have a consent agenda? A bunch of stuff. So, a bunch of additions tonight. So are there any items that need to be pulled out of the consent agenda for separate consideration? Barring that, well, Fred, did you want to pull the item out for separate
No, I'm abstaining. I'm abstaining from the
from the whole, okay. So are there any questions on anything in the consent agenda? Is that the preferred, how?
Yeah, that's okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thanks, Ray. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Nate. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And now we're to reports. You guys have talked a lot more than usual tonight, but you're up again.
I think I'd keep mine pretty short because I've already talked about the vocabulary word of the week, so gotten a rundown on that. I did want to talk about advisory a little bit because I left that out when we talked about discipline and, proactive interventions. I really look at advisory as one of those. having that opportunity for teachers to develop relationships, a close relationship, meeting with 8 to 10 students each day. I'll just share a little story, which I had a teacher come up to me and tell me that she had one of her advisory students come up to her, kind of a really shy girl, doesn't talk too much, and said, may I talk to you? I don't really feel comfortable sharing this, but I trust you, so I want to tell you that I have this young man that's kind of bothering me, saying things that are inappropriate and stuff. And so from telling this teacher, the teacher was able to contact me, and I was able to intervene. And it was just nice, and the teacher in the email said, this is why we have advisory, with a couple exclamation points, because had that student not had that relationship with that teacher, she may not have said anything to anybody and just kept enduring it. So that's another, again, that's a way to be proactive in this stuff, and just another intervention strategy to help hopefully eliminate some disciplinary issues before they start. But what I wanted to share about our advisory is we're implementing weekly SEL lessons. That's number one, it's good to have, just a short, usually I have a short video, 2 to 3 minutes, that I share, and I have a couple questions to answer. Something to get through in the 8 to 10 minutes they have their advisory. But, something I try to make an engaging topic, engaging video. And then what I heard so far, Neil, you have an advisory, but I think the questions have spurred some conversation amongst the students. So hopefully this will be just a good way to work on SEL, social emotional learning, with the students, but also get our students trained and our faculty trained on who knows when we're going to need we'll have maybe a crisis, or something happens out there in the world, domestic terrorism or something, and we need to get our kids together and kind of walk through a plan and a process and having conversations. This is kind of just a small way to kind of get us trained to do that. So I just want to share, we're doing these weekly lessons mainly for the SEL, but also just as a preparation to maybe a crisis down the road, or a need down the road where we need to kind of meet with kids and offer some opportunities to ask questions or ask questions, and just be there for them for support. And my last item is the fall play. It has passed, but I did try to put it on there in case you read your board report early. But it was a nice job. Help desk only had 5 students in it, but they did a fantastic job, and as always. And I just want to congratulate the students and Mr. Knopf as the director. Did a nice job.
Thanks. You're up again.
Alright, I'll only outline a few of those and answer any questions that you have. So, the World Kindness Day was an initiative that started with our social workers in the district. They began that conversation and proposed a plan that incorporated the high school students, which is really neat. We had the Key Club members come over to read the students' kindness books during our morning meetings, and the kids love that. We love seeing the big kids come through the building, and I've actually had a lot of requests from students and elementary teachers to do that more often, incorporate the high school students, whether it's a Key Club or athletes, to come over, or just the general student to come over and across the parking lot and share in our learning experience. So anytime we do that, it's a great opportunity for our kids. We had several other activities that revolved around kindness that day, and the general feedback that I got, the kids were in tune. They were really interested in the activities, and they were engaged in those activities throughout the day. So again, I want to thank our social workers, Karina and Merrick, for putting that on. And then the Key Club, Meredith, I appreciate her willingness to come over and bring the kids too. The second piece and last piece I want to talk about is that Department of Health audit that I mentioned there, and the numbers that were outlined as excluded students. And I think it's important to note that those excluded students only missed 1 day of school. The county helped in getting those parents expedited vaccinations with their provider. Anytime you tell a provider that a student's excluded from school, they do everything that they can to get that student in. A couple instances, the student was able to go from school to the doctor's and then come back the next day. When some of these kids were on waiting lists for a couple of months before that. So
As much as it pains us to say to exclude a student from school, the county did come in and help support those excluded students, so I appreciate that. And that was a lot of legwork in a short amount of time for us to provide all the documentation needed for the county or the health department to review all of those records. So our high school nurse and our elementary nurse both worked on that together. So I appreciate both of their efforts in that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Holly.
All right, I am going to start with volleyball. So obviously, since we turned in our reports, a lot has changed. So we have the Section 4 champs, we have the regional champs, and we are headed to states this weekend. So they will play Saturday night at 7:15 in Glens Falls, and when they win, they will play Sunday afternoon at 2. So it's pretty exciting. We're doing a parade tomorrow to send them off. We'll walk through the high school, walk through the elementary, the bus will pick them up, and then we have, they might be watching.
Oh, super top secret stuff.
Yes.
That's totally fun.
Monday night, we will have an end of the season celebration for everybody, for all the athletes for the fall. It'll include Candor, SVC, and SVE teams. I do think that the 2 SVE teams have decided that they're doing their own thing, so they won't be there, but we'll have all Candor and SVEC teams, so we're excited. We're gonna start out, each team has made a board, so that if you can picture the trifold boards, they've summarized their year on the board. So we'll have those up for display, and then we'll have some cookies, and then they'll break off into their teams to do the individual celebrations. We originally wanted to have everybody together and have the varsity coach get up and talk about the program as a whole, but then we're like, okay, we're gonna get 400 people, however, I don't know how many it'll be, but anyways, get all these people together in one room and then break them off and have them go to another room, so it just felt like it was too much movement for that. So we're gonna do the mingling before and then break off into the individual groups, so we're excited to celebrate everybody. The AED grant feels like it has been hanging on for months, and it has. We're waiting still for paperwork from one of the districts to be able to submit it, but we're now running into the issue, the team, or the business that we were gonna go through to get the AEDs is now down to 10, because they had such a great deal going with them. They're down to 10 AEDs, so we might have lost our opportunity to get that, so. Looking at other options to see what we can do, but we still need the rest of the paperwork in order to submit it to begin with, so. For Katie, the team building, they actually just had a Dish to Pass Thanksgiving gathering today before the afternoon runs. Great turnout, and they had a great time. And then we've talked about Tyler Drive, that is going well. She was saying that a couple drivers who aren't fond of technology actually came into her and said, we want to learn more about this, can you help us? And she wasn't ready to tackle it with them yet, wanting to work out the bugs, but they're on it. So it's fun to see. I think it's working well for them, so. Go volleyball.
No,
Yeah.
man, I'm always trying to skip you,
It's
man.
all right. You wanna skip me tonight?
No.
Oh.
I wanna hear what you have to say.
We used some of our ESSER 2 money this summer to sort of spend that down on technology to purchase some swivel systems. Basically, they are an iPad that sits on a base, and the teacher can wear a microphone around their neck, and it can follow them. It will track them through the room to record them teaching. It also has the ability to have 4 extra microphones that could be placed in student groups, so that it would record audio from 5 different microphones, and then as the teacher watches their lesson back, they can switch the audio channels and listen to what the students were doing if they were doing discussions. So I'm hopeful that teachers will start to use these more and more, can use them with observations, with some of her teacher observations with the special ed teachers, and I think from her perspective, it was really great for the teacher to watch the lesson that she watched. They were able to watch it on their own and reflect on it, and then they could have a conversation. So I think it was a nice way to give them a chance to just see how it works. Nobody likes to watch themselves do anything or hear themselves speak. But I think once teachers do it a few times, I think they can gain a lot from that. So I'm hoping that these will be useful tools for teachers in both buildings. And then AI is everywhere, and it is in education to some degree. We in New York State, in some ways, are helped by EdLaw 2D. There are no companies that like ChatGPT and any other AI tools are not EdLaw 2D compliant just yet. So teachers are not having to use that with their students, but teachers can use it to help with their instruction. So whether it's helping to get ideas, generate ideas for lessons, or generate lesson plans, generate rubrics, help them generate recommendations, college recommendations for students, saving themselves a lot of time in many of the paperworky type activities that can then help them, give them free time to do other things. So I shared that with the high school faculty in November, and we'll be sharing it with Pete's faculty in December, and continuing to work with teachers that are using it a little bit ahead of everyone else to find out how they're using it so that I can help support everybody else. But we'll see AI more and more in the classroom. It'll just be embedded in all the things that we use. You've probably seen that in your own lives.
Are there efforts by those companies? I mean, is New York a big enough market, New York education, that they're going to figure out ways to?
Yep,
Yeah.
they are. And things like Khan Academy they're trying to create their own student Khan Academy AI bot that the student would be given a problem, a math problem, or they could put their math problem in, and unlike what the tools that are available now, that will just answer the question for you. It will walk them through step by step, and as the student answers, it can recognize where their misunderstanding is and sort of help direct them instead of just giving them the correct answer. So they're really looking at it as a sort of personal tutor for students when they're home to try and help them with homework. So I think that there's a lot of potential for something like that for one-on-one help for students that may not have that support at home, or even in school if they need a little extra support.
Thanks. No.
Okay. So, my first item, the Reading League partnership, that gave an overview of what we had done. Let's see, Superintendent's Conference Day, October 20th. So since then, we had our November early release day where we did use feedback from the teachers. We had sent out a Google Form survey following the October 20th Conference Day, collected their perspective, their feedback, opinions, and a side note, I asked Matt, because I was gonna go old school with the Google form results and highlight like, what are the patterns and what are the categories? And I called him in and I'm like, can we use AI? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, all right, let's see what happens. So he took one question, all of the responses, pasted it into ChatGPT, and he asked it to classify it into 5 categories, and it did. And we had the feedback so that we could then use that information to kind of put together our message back to the teachers. So just a side note on how we are using AI. But the November early release day for the Reading League, we did split we were already feeling that we were going to have to, but the teachers' feedback just reassured us that that was the right decision. And the elementary plus special ed teachers and reading specialists continued with the Reading League on the 6-step lesson plan. The high school you heard about worked on the vocab initiative, or it aligned with the vocab initiative. Let's see, the swivel, Matt also mentioned it, so I need to thank him for helping get that set up. Pete has already reached out to the special ed teachers that have already used it to have them share some feedback at his December faculty meeting, just to start using it. And I think Pete's going to use it for himself, for the faculty meeting, to just for their own, your own reflection. What do you see? And it really has helped that conversation with the teachers. And like they said, they noticed things that they were like, oh, I need to do that differently, or I need to change that. But then they also realized that maybe they're pretty critical of their own teaching, and they thought, okay, maybe I'm not doing so bad. So it was good. That was with 2 of our newer teachers. The other thing I wanted to point out on the back, I'll continue to keep the district priorities on there, because if I don't, Chris will make sure to let me know. But I want to point out the work that we're doing, the literacy instruction. So we know that as of 11/1, the work we've been doing. But as we tried this summer, or as we started creating that SMART goal around the core instruction, and I hope it shows as a roadmap. Sorry. But it shows the roadmap of what we set as a priority based on data, based on what we knew. We set a SMART goal. We outlined what we wanted to have happen. We had to tweak it a little bit, but as of 11/1, seeing that outcome of the word of the week and being able to see it on paper, what we, a goal we set and how that has come through. And the last thing I want to share, on whatever November your faculty meetings were, I had the opportunity, the privilege, to start my day at Pete's faculty meeting at 8 a.m. and I ended my day at Wayne's faculty meeting at 2:30. And I'm not sure when I've ever had that opportunity to see a district-wide consistent message from 8 o'clock in the morning at the elementary school to 2:30 at the high school, talking whether it was trauma-informed instruction, literacy initiatives, or just that general, this is what we have going on. It wasn't 2 separate buildings, it was truly a district message. So, nice job, guys.
Thanks. To Chris.
We finished our tax collections for the year, the individual tax collections. You had the report in your packets, and I'll have a full reconciliation next month. We did have, some turned back over to the county to be reassessed with the town and county taxes. We have some state lands taxes that will be coming in, and various other, our STAR payment in January. So I'll get you all of that information as we go forward. I had the opportunity to spend some time last month, end of October, in a conference with the 5 BOCES of the OCM region at a conference, and spent some sessions on, really relevant now practical issues for school districts. And then last week I was at, or I guess the beginning of this week, up until yesterday, at the ASBO conference, the statewide conference, and hearing a lot of the same information. I spent some time in a workshop on Sunday. The focus was human resources. Spent a lot of time in sessions about one of the topics that you'll be hearing us talk about soon and ongoing is the transition to the zero emission buses and the infrastructure and the charging and the financing and all of the things that we're starting to think about and we'll have to be thinking about going forward as we start to come up against some of those dates that are important. The July 1st, 2027, that's, we're hearing is not moving. The requirement that after that point, we can't purchase any more diesel buses. And by 2035, we need to be fully implemented. So, so like I said, that's gonna be a topic that you're going to hear about from transportation, right, Holly, and from us, our side. So, kind of working together to make that happen. Auditors were here November 3rd to do our single audit. They do that separate with our extra classroom audit, so we'll have some reports for you by next month. And then on November 2nd, we met, the focus of our administrative team meeting was to kind of do a pre-budget, kind of where we are, what we're thinking, where we're going, what we know, or think we know, as going into the 24-25. The principals have helped me schedule grade level and department meetings. We have most of the departments set up with times to meet at the early part of December, so right after the Thanksgiving holiday. And also setting up meetings individually with principals and departments to kind of really set the priorities for their budgets for next year.
Thanks. We have Mike Slog and then Brent.
Okay. So, before I jump right in, I wanted to acknowledge, I know everyone on the board's heard the news, but Dr. Jeff Madison, who's been a wonderful asset, not just to Candor from long before I arrived, but to the whole region, is going to be moving on. And I feel a personal sense of loss because he's been very helpful to me and a great mentor. But I'm also excited that he was asked to be the Senior Deputy Commissioner for Educational Policy in New York State. It's the number 2 position at State Ed, and I think it's great for everyone in the state. He's a very hardworking, bright person who will bring a lot of wisdom to the State Ed Department. And I'm not saying they necessarily need a whole lot more, but it will be nice and good for our region. So I'm going to reach out to our TST BOCES board member, Linda Paget, because again, with that sense of loss, I'm also thinking, okay, they're going to have to do a search and it's difficult times. And my only thought with that is to offer, Linda, our support if she has questions. Is there someone we can help? Because I'm hoping we get someone as close to Jeff as possible, Jeff Madison. So big shoes to fill. The next thing, Jim and I were able to meet with the architects and engineers and project managers on our capital project last week. And, there's not too much more to report. I had told you that all of the drawings and everything had been submitted to New York State Ed, and they'll be there. We can expect a review in early to late January, which is on time. When they came and we talked about the project, we were talking more about the timing of everything. Were we going to be able to start the project and complete everything that's on there for the opening of school next September? And we are on track for that. I also want to thank, really thank the whole facilities committee, but when I sent out the last update along with the plans, I had one of the facilities committee members, Rob Murray, offer to take time off from work and sit down with them, look over the plans, ask questions that honestly Jim or I wouldn't have known to ask. Some of the roofing projects, there were opportunities while the roof is off to add a little insulation here or there, which will get us some efficiency for years to come. The group of architects and engineers, I was a little unsure of how they would feel about it, because I don't think that happens often when they come to a school just to give their updates. And I can tell you they were appreciative and impressed. They said it during the meeting and after the meeting. Other questions that came up from Rob were, we're buying a generator for the bus garage. Will that be able to generate electric buses? And clear answer was no. But then they could explain the added expense of getting a generator that big. And honestly, if the power goes down, well, that's going to affect when we're all electric. it's gonna affect the following days, right? The buses should already be charged. We might be able to run school that day. If power's not back up and we can't charge a bus, well, then we may have to call an emergency closing day because we can't get the students to school. But the generator that we are purchasing will be able to keep the bus operational. We'll keep our pipes from freezing, both in the bus garage and in the car wash. So it was a great meeting. We're on schedule to start working on the fields in May, also on the bus garage in May, and then right after the students are gone, start on this building first. This building over the summer will need to be shut right down at times because they'll have to turn off the gas and electric. A lot of the gas lines are on the roofs that will have to come right off, which does mean that if we're still planning on running summer school this coming year, it would have to be at the elementary, but we were able to plan that as well. So we'll be able to run summer school without interruption, without ever having construction workers on the roof overhead while we're doing that. So overall, a very good meeting. I don't know if there are any questions about any of that. Superintendent's Kim already talked about our first superintendent's conference day and our early release day and the next. I appreciate Kim and Wayne and Pete and everybody really on the team, Matt, who gathered feedback from all the teachers and then sat down and we planned, for the next professional development days to make sure we were getting and using that feedback. Strategic planning, as you know, because I put it in the report and sent it to you early, we asked to change those two board workshop days, one in March and one in April. We had already planned those days to work on our strategic planning, but they've just moved from the 7th of March to the 5th and from the 11th in April to the 10th. I'm excitedly awaiting that. Also in there, I put a note about weather-related closings, and I want to let the board know I've also really featured that in the November newsletter to parents. I just think it's very important that parents know, not just that we really do talk with the highway departments, the weather reporters, we're up early, driving the roads. And one of the more senior drivers also drives the roads in the morning to see the conditions firsthand. Because as you all know, it could be a blizzard, up at Straits Corners, but clear on Honey Pot Hill, or vice versa. It's a complex district, and we can't simply go by when are our neighbors closing and when are they not. We have to make the decision for our own district. Again, it also happens that in Ithaca, it's clear, Binghamton's a mess, we're in the middle. What are we gonna do? It's not a decision we take lightly, but it always hinges on safety. We'll never open if it's gonna be unsafe. And we hear it first from the highway departments, the senior drivers, the transportation department, the state and police and sheriffs, we're all in contact with them. And if we can get our students on our buses to school safely, we have the obligation to stay open. And again, the newsletter is about that. And we just want people to prepare and plan. I did have a situation last year where I had a parent call, was very quiet, but was concerned and describing the conditions outside of her house. She lives on one of the side roads that comes off Honey Pot Hill. The next time the weather was bad, I drive the district. I was up at Straits Corners, it was clear. Through the valley, it was very clear. Went up Brinks Road and then over that way. And where their house is, I understood exactly what she was talking about. That morning, I had talked to our town highway department, and they said the roads had been cleared, they had been by it. There's no tree break in front of her house. It's just fields on top of the hill. And it had drifted there, and I understood her frustration, but it wouldn't make sense to close school for everybody. So that day I called her and said, well, our bus driver who drives that route, I spoke with him. He doesn't have a problem. He's driving a very heavy bus with big tires. He has no problem. But this particular parent likes to drive their child, and I wouldn't drive them. I wouldn't try to go down that road either. So again, those tough decisions have to be made. And we do respect the families right to make a decision for their family. Safety's first, so that's what we're going with. And I'm gonna try to communicate that out as clearly and often as I can. You mentioned summer school, we will have that. I do want to give a shout out to our PTSA. Usually, yeah.
He did that the last time she was missing.
She's, yeah, I know, Jen's supposed to be here, but, and how do I say her last name? I always mispronounce it.
Stasio, okay.
Stasio, right. But they did have a meeting Tuesday, and there's a lot going on with them. Their K-12 fundraiser is completed, and they'll be able to sponsor some parties at the elementary school. They bring in the career speakers on the second Tuesday of every month. The last one, they had 39 students participate at that. Trunk or Treat was another wonderful success, and we appreciate all the work that they did going into that. And then some upcoming events. They're playing some extra fun at the opening games for winter sports. They have a glow party. I'm not quite sure what that is for 5th and 6th grade, but it sounds like fun. I want to go. They're supporting the Scholastic Family Night. And again, I had to read this one twice. They're sponsoring staff massages. Sounds great, but okay. Then they have all the holiday fun parties that they do both for the elementary and the high school. And they're holding 2 indoor movie nights on the 29th to give families something to do over the break. And it will be a double feature. The movies are still to be determined, but there'll be a 5 p.m. and a 7 p.m. movie for our students and their families. So they've been great.
We are to board comments. Are there any board comments?
I would like to make a couple. Who are we playing in the volleyball match on Saturday?
Chautauqua Lake.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I read I've got 2 great nieces who go there.
Oh.
But I still root for them. The schoolwear that we are selling now, does the school get some kind of a kickback from that?
We did a fundraiser, but it ended a while ago now. The one that we have on the website,
Yeah.
we do not get a kickback.
Oh, that's too bad. My wife went crazy. We've got alumni from here who were not happy with our choice of mascot because they're in that age group. They wouldn't be happy if it was anything but Indians. So we offered them some of the schoolwear as Christmas presents. And it added up really fast. But I haven't heard any complaints about that, other than one son who wanted to know if he could get the word Indian put on it. And yeah, he's in that age bracket that doesn't want to see the change.
The company that's on our website now is the one that did a lot of the grafting.
It's a sister station of them.
What's that?
It's a sister station.
Yeah, so the company that's on our website now, although we're not getting a kickback, that is the company that helped us with the logo itself and developing it. So we did get some benefit for it.
Yeah. And the other thing, SEL, we talk about that a lot. And tonight we were talking about disadvantaged students. And I think the stuff that we do in SEL is going to be a big help dealing with some of our disadvantaged students who honestly don't have the advantages, to reuse the word, but that some of our other kids do. I'm thinking of things like vacations and trips with the parents and visiting grandma and grandpa out of state. All those things help these kids who can't do those, don't have those opportunities. So I think all the efforts that you were talking about tonight are going to pay back dividends, because it'll help bring those kids out, because they're not on a level playing field because they don't have those advantages. And there are questions and discussions that come up, and those kids don't have a clue what you're talking about or what their friends are talking about. So typically they hang back in the corner and don't get involved. And the successes you talked about tonight, I think are gonna go a big way to help those kids become more confident, more competent, and better citizens in the future. I see nothing but good coming out of it. Your turn.
Thank you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Enjoy the break, get some recharge time. You know, you're all working hard, so it's all deserved.
Go volleyball. Go Coyotes. Recognition of visitors, you want another bite at the apple? Good? Okay. It is 9 on the dot, adjourned.
Need you all to sign the reports from both counties for the unpaid taxes. So there's two.